Great. Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. This is the second episode of Know Your Options. I'm here with Lindsey to talk about home birth today. And Lindsey, if you just want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, hey, I'm Lindsey. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I just had my second home birth with this little guy, Kendrick here. He's just over a month old. Um, so right now I'm hanging out at home with the kids. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and she was born at home as well. And when I go back to work, I work as a postpartum doula. So I get to support families as they navigate the early days and months of life with the baby. And I absolutely love doing that and all things birth. So I'm super excited to talk about home birth today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just curious, like, did you always know you wanted a home birth, or how did that come about for you?
I did. Even before I was completely set on the idea of having kids, I was like, if I do, I know I want to do it at home. I think for me, growing up, I spent a lot of time in hospitals with like older relatives who were sick and passing away. So I always held that association that the hospital was a place where sick people were. And I love the idea of being in your own space and like the comfort of your home and just the peace of mind that brings. So
Yeah.
Home birth was always the route.
Awesome. Was your partner and like your family supportive of that decision?
Not initially. My husband was very apprehensive about it, and we had a lot of discussions, and it wasn't until we met with our midwives that he was able to just go through his whole list of questions. And they really put his mind at ease.
Yeah.
And the same with our family. It's always with home birth. I think the biggest thing is, what if this happens? What if? And it's, becoming more of the norm now, but definitely not for, like my parents' generation.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit of not convincing, but just basically saying, like, I know that this is the best option for us. And even if you're not comfortable with it, this is what we're doing. So
Yeah.
And then by the second time around, they just accepted it. So
yeah. They're like, you've done this, you got it.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people hold like that association with the hospital being like the only place to birth, because like for the past few generations that's how it's been. But go back to like our grandparents or great grandparents, like they probably gave birth at home, and that's been the norm for much longer than a hospital.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how quickly the like mainstream option comes into place, because when I say that same thing to people, I'm like, people have been birthing at home for way longer than they have in a hospital. And, look at the population we have now. But it's easy to forget that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. Because I know when I first got pregnant, like the first thing I was told is like, call the doctor, get that set up. Like there wasn't that discussion of home birth, or like you could find a midwife, do this on your own. So I'm really excited to dig in more. What were like some misconceptions or just like ideas that you had that maybe changed once you got into labor? And
so I knew, I guess I had one of my best friends. She had a home birth, and so she was the closest person to me that had successfully done that. And so to be able to just kind of like pick her brain and learn all about her experience really, I think, kind of put me in a good position to proceed that way with my own birth. It was a lot of just research first, like which midwives we wanted to go with. And like I said, a lot of the what ifs. So like, if this happens, what would happen? What would need to happen where I'd have to be transported to the hospital? Or what are my options for pain management? What are my options for, like just, will I be able to eat while I'm in labor? A lot of stuff like that. So yeah, and it was really empowering to kind of just go through and do that research and just know all the different options.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's unfortunately not like the norm to like really dig into all of your options. Like, and that's unfortunate because there are so many different things that we can do for ourselves.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. And so like, how do you prepare your home for birth?
So for the first one, I didn't have a toddler, so I had a lot more time to gassy. I had a lot more time to make the space what I wanted it to be, like aesthetically, which I think is one of the really fun parts, and one of the benefits of having a home birth, is that you can make your space whatever you want it to be. So it was a lot of like, my nesting took the form of cleaning towards the end with both births, just to have the space like clean and ready. Oh God. And there's some supplies that you have to gather. So towels, whatever food you want in the house. Our midwives gave us just a really nice list of things that we needed to get and have set up for them. And then, deciding where you want the birth tub to be, if you're going to use that, making sure you have the proper hose connection for your sink so you can fill your birth tub, kind of like little things like that you might not think of.
Yeah.
But it's nice having that space yours and in your home, because you can kind of go back and tweak it at any point while you're waiting for the baby to arrive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you end up laboring in the pool a lot, in the birth tub?
I did. And the second with Kendrick's, he was born in the tub, which was really nice. My first, I was in the tub a lot, but she ended up being born in the bathroom because the toilet was where I was having the best luck progressing. So that's where she was born.
Perfect. That is like the golden like ticket though. Like the toilet can be so helpful in labor.
Yes, it really is. And it was with him too. I was on the toilet until about 10 minutes before he was born, and I got back in the tub.
And trying to think of what else. Is there just any like tips that you have, or any like suggestions you would make?
Yeah. So it's been interesting with the pandemic because so many people are switching to home birth, and just with like talking to my midwives there, midwives like are just booked out because so many people are choosing that option now. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is, if you are on the fence about home birth, contact a midwife, or there's a lot of online groups that you can join and ask questions like, what was your experience? Just basically any troubleshooting that you want to do. People in the home birth community are so supportive and always excited to talk about home birth. And so yeah, just meet with a midwife and get your questions answered, because I think the biggest thing when I tell people, that my kids were born at home, they're like, oh my gosh, weren't you scared? Like, wouldn't you rather be in the hospital if something went wrong? And just to know that most of the time, everything's going to be fine. And you've got trained midwives there who do know what to do if something does go wrong. And, you can ask your midwife about what their transport rates are. And most of the time they're really, really low. And I just like to remind people that, it's your birth, and the experience that you have with birth sticks with you for the rest of your life. And it has a massive impact on, especially those first few months when you're adapting to life with a child, if it's your first or second or third. So if you just feel empowered and feel like you've done your research going into birth, I think that just sets you up for such a better postpartum experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think home birth really allows for that. Trying to think of what other conversations I've been having with people. Yeah, I mean, it's great. You don't have to leave your house after you're born. You're just there, and you get into bed, and you're cocooned there for a while. So yeah, it's a great option. And I think if you're feeling nervous about it or apprehensive, just definitely reach out to people who have had that experience, or talk to a midwife who can answer those questions.
Yeah, definitely. I think the home birth like really allows you to birth naturally. Like we've medicalized birth so much. Like when you birth at home, you have that ability to just like fully relax and like control the environment a little bit more than, you know, at a hospital when people are coming in and out. And that's just really powerful to have that autonomy going into motherhood. Like you said, birth is the like stepping stone into motherhood, and you want that to be strong and solid.
Yeah, and if you know, I always encourage people, home birth, hospital birth, wherever, to try doing it without an epidural, because that's what we're made to do. And you know, I think our society has kind of been conditioned to try and avoid pain at all costs possible. But with childbirth, like it's what we're made to do. And if you can come out of that and like, you know, you just feel like a badass. And like not to say that you don't if you birth any other way, or, you know, have a cesarean or anything like that, but it's just like an amazing sense of power that you come out with. Like, I did this, you know, and I was able to do this in my home. And you know, I guess that's the other big thing with home birth too, is that you can have anyone that you want there. So it, in some cases, lets you have a better support team, especially now where, you know, doulas are just being allowed back in hospitals, and, you know, the number of support people is limited. That's not the case with the home birth. So if that's, you know, something that's important to anyone considering where and how they want to birth, that's an upside to home birth.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially now when, at least here, like locally, central Wisconsin, like doulas aren't allowed back in yet. So, but yeah, like a lot of places, it's like, are extra people allowed now? And at home, there's no restrictions for
your house. Yeah. Or whatever you're comfortable with. So
that's great. And how do you, I know you're a doula. Have you attended a hospital birth? Or like had that experience? Okay.
No. So I'm, I think down the road, I will probably step into some birth doula work, but my focus has just been postpartum. And that really, you know, I've been doing it for a little over a year now. And I stepped into that career after I had my daughter and realized, like, wow, this is really hard. People need support. I want to be there for people to, you know, process their birth and help them, you know, with breastfeeding and, you know, all of that. So that being said, I've worked with people who have had all types of births. And so, yeah, it's really great to get the different perspectives and just, you know, to hear about everyone's experiences.
Yeah. Going into postpartum a little bit then, like what's like your biggest tip or something for people to keep in mind as they move into motherhood, like part of that transition? Is there any tips or suggestions that you use?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's the one that you hear the most often, but I think that's because it's the most important. And it's that you really, really do have to take care of yourself first, because you can't take care of anybody else if you're completely exhausted and not eating and not sleeping. So I think I always encourage people to make a list of like who their support people are. Who, you know, some people might be better at coming over to help you cook and clean, where other people might be better just to come over and talk with you about how you're feeling, and know who those people are, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because so many of us feel like we'll be a burden to others if we need help, but you absolutely do when you have a baby.
Yeah.
And most people are more than happy to help, but they don't necessarily know how. And I think, sometimes they don't offer because they're like, well, they haven't asked, they have a new baby, I don't want to be bothersome. Having those conversations with people before baby arrives, you're prepared and feel confident that you'll have that support.
Yeah, that's a great point, because people do want to help. And I think, like you said, they don't, or they offer help that isn't actually serving us. So like just making that clear communication, like, hey, this would be helpful if you do the dishes. Just be really clear and get that support network built up before birth even happens.
Right. Because after that point, I mean, you're going to be in that newborn fog, and you're not even going to like know how to ask for what. And so, yeah, just setting yourself up as much as you can before the baby arrives.
Yeah.
It's my biggest postpartum tip.
Yeah, absolutely. And it valid and true one, because it is the most important, is having that community of just people to support us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, unless if there's anything else, any last minute tips or like experience that you had that you'd like to share?
Yeah. My first birth was really, really long. It was 36 hours, and to be at home for that and be able to like walk in my house, walk outside in my neighborhood, like get outside and like see familiar things, was so amazing and it really helped like make that long of a birth doable. And I really wonder if I had been anywhere else, if I would have been able to labor for that long. And yeah, I mean, it's such a homey, cozy experience. It, and not to say that you can't have candles lit and music going and like oils diffusing and things like that in any other setting, but the fact that you're relaxed and you're in your own home and it's familiar, I think, yeah, it just made it such a better experience than being anywhere else. Like there's no place like home, it's like so cliche, but especially when you're going through such a huge experience that's so transformative.
Yeah.
Being in your space where you're comfortable is awesome.
Absolutely. You said something about like laboring length, and I think it's important to mention, like, hospitals, The Business of Being Born is a really great documentary. But it is very much about that turnover of, they don't let you labor forever. Like 36 hours would be a really long time to be hanging out at the hospital.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really, home birth allows for such a natural experience. Like your body truly gets to do its thing and labor as long as it needs to, because it's often not just like a couple hours or like a short experience.
Yeah. And it allows you, I mean, you have to trust your body and you have to completely surrender, because if you're at home, there's no other option at that point. Like there's not an epidural for you to get at home. And yeah, it's on your own time, under your terms. And you said something that I was going to touch on, and then I totally got distracted by this guy and lost my train of thought. But yeah, it's just a totally different experience.
Yeah, and I've never seen a home birth. I've assisted hospital births, so like I have that perspective, and just seeing my own birth was a hospital birth. It's actually kind of funny. So the day I ended up going into labor was the day I was supposed to like finalize everything with a midwife, and he was just like, nope, I'm coming now. And I was like, okay, we go to the hospital, I guess. um,
Had you been planning a home birth, or were you?
I was kind of. I thought I
Okay.
had several more weeks, but
Yeah.
I didn't. But I wanted a home birth.
Yeah.
It ended up being like I had a great experience in the hospital, but I really like studied a lot. I read everything I could,
Hmm.
and I forced my partner to read a bunch of things like, hey, this is what you need to look out for and be prepared for. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
But I can just see how often in a hospital that natural like process of just like relaxing and not getting stressed,
Hmm.
like how it happens so often in the hospital setting with people coming in, they're always poking you and moving you and touching you, and it's like it, it's the opposite of how birth happens naturally.
Yeah. It's kind of like if your birth happens to you, or if like you make your birth happen
Hmm.
in some ways. And again, like that can that can go both ways in any setting. But um, a lot of the families that I work with feel like they weren't an active participant
Hmm.
necessarily in their birth. And part of that is setting, and part of it is not knowing what your options are. But I mean, it always makes me so sad because, like you said, a lot of people just don't take the time to know their options. And it's just, yeah, birth is huge. And I'm that's like my soapbox thing, and I'm sure my friends and family are like, okay, Lindsay, we get it. But it's, you carry that with you forever, and you look at your children, and that's
Hmm.
always going to be a reminder of that experience. And yeah, just going into it with that knowledge and trusting your body, and
Hmm.
this is so important.
Yes, and I think like you were saying how it's such a like for me birth was like a transformation. Like I became like a woman and like in my power. um like I was reborn into this Taylor, where before I was like, really like shy and meek, and I wouldn't put myself out there, I wouldn't speak my mind. Like
Mhm.
my birth experience completely changed me, and I think that's what I want other women to experience, is like you can come to your power and feel awesome
Mhm.
as a result of your birth. Like
Yeah.
it's totally possible and it happens.
Mhm. Yeah, we're on the same page, because that's a lot of the discussion when I meet with the families before their baby's born, is, not only preparing for postpartum, but what's your birth plan look like, and how are you gonna, what's your approach? Like, what can we
Mhm.
do to make this the best experience for you, so you can just emerge like an awesome badass who feels super proud of what you just accomplished.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Just
Mhm.
have the baby. Like, you should come out of it feeling that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you deserve to, and like you're worthy,
Hmm.
totally worthy of that.
Yeah.
I think home birth is cool because a lot of it is like kind of like a mental game. Like you have to almost rewire your brain to think like hospital based to like you based and your own power and your ability. Um, is that something that you experienced? Like just kind of the surrender and the mental.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely is. And that's good that you brought that up, because that's something I would have gotten off of this chat with and been like, crap, I didn't talk about that. No, it's completely mental, because it's you. And for me, it was like I kept repeating to myself, like, I am the only one who can birth my baby. Like, it's all me. Um, and yeah, you do have to surrender, because
Mhm.
it's the only way. And like I said, when you're at home, there's no other, you have to manage your pain. Like, your doula and your midwives and your partner, whoever's there, can help you, with hip squeezes, or, whatever, back rubs. But I mean, ultimately it's on you to
Mhm.
have the baby be born. And I know, um, preparing for my first one, I was just like, you know, this is just going to be a trip, and I'm going to enter like the world of birth and like maybe go back and forth between, you know, like
Mhm.
dimensions, and anything could happen, and just being completely open to that and
Yeah.
just riding it out.
Yeah, I find that when people, like my clients and even for myself, like when I was able to find like truly surrender, because at first for me anyway, it was like, I don't want this baby right now. Am I ready? Like that early labor stage is like, oh, like
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
And then you have to eventually like, okay, I have, like you said, like it's my responsibility. I'm the only one that can do this. My
Mhm.
body can do this. I'm
Yeah.
made to do this. And just like totally, once I hit that like surrender, like, okay, I'm just going to relax. My body's going to do its thing. Like that's when I think he was like born soon after, but it's like, you have to allow yourself that space.
You. And I think that's part of the reason why my first labor was so long, is because it was my first, and as prepared as I felt,
Hmm.
you still go into it, and you know, you can be as prepared as you possibly could be, but it's still a brand new experience.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, once I realized like, okay, this is going on, like I'm getting tired, and like I just kind of took a moment, like we went outside and walked, and I just like went deep within and connected with my baby, and was like, it's, we got to do this, like this is, it's time. And then yeah, we got back inside and sat on the toilet, and it wasn't long after that that she was born. So, and it's, yeah, it's hard to get to that point because you have to get past the like the anxiety and the fear of the unknown and like the pain.
Hmm.
um, but that's what it takes, is
Hmm.
to, yeah, just let it go.
Yeah. Did you find yourself as like apprehensive with your second birth at first, or as anxious in the beginning?
Um, no, not at all. And if anything, I was like, I wouldn't say I was underprepared because we had everything we needed, but I
Hmm.
was like, I'm a laid back person in general, but I was like, yeah, you know, baby's gonna show up any day. The tub's here. Like, I think this is where we're gonna put it. Um, you know, I didn't have, I definitely didn't spend as much time like making the space pretty like I did with
Hmm.
my first one. We just recently moved, so that was part of it, but um, it was more of like, okay, I've done this before. I know I have everything I need.
Hmm.
Um, felt a lot more confident just because I, you know, having done it once before.
Yeah.
Um, his birth was a lot faster. It was like 11 hours. Um, and yeah, so definitely not as much of the like, you know, like I said, I didn't have as much time to do a lot of that
Hmm.
preparation with the toddler running around, but um, it just didn't feel as necessary either.
Hmm.
You know, like a beautiful birth space is so wonderful, but if your head is right in the right spot, you know, you don't need it.
Yeah.
So,
And as you know, like what I learned is, I mean, postpartum is where it's really important to be prepared for like
mhm,
after birth. I think for our first birth, we're so focused on birth that
yeah,
we forget, like, after birth, you have a baby for the rest of your life.
yeah,
What are you going to do?
yeah. No, and that's so true. And that's exactly how I was with my first.
Hmm.
Because it's hard to, birth is so huge, it's hard to see past it.
Hmm.
Like, you know, you kind of get your head wrapped around what birth is going to be like, but for me at least, yeah, I couldn't see past that experience at all. You know, like we had meals made and we had our support people lined up, um but this time I was much more prepared for postpartum.
Hmm.
I was, and yeah, that's what inspired me to go into postpartum doula work, is
Yeah.
because, yeah, people forget about postpartum.
Yeah. It's such important work that you do because it's so true. Like and I think I like how you explained it, like that birth is this huge experience that we just can't see past. Like we can't imagine ourselves. And maybe that's in part of like just like throwing ideas, but just like because of like this rebirth we have, like
Mhm.
we don't realize this, but we don't know who we're going to be after
the
birth.
baby. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. I'm sure I'm kind of throwing you out there, but if any of you have questions or want to talk about home birth, definitely reach out to Lindsey or postpartum support. She is your girl, so reach out to her for that. And yes, thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.